the question and answer period. Before we begin, I just have a few preventative measures that we share to protect the health of our interpreters. To prevent any disruptive audio feedback incidents, we remind all participants to keep their earpieces away from the microphone at all times. And when you are not using them, to please place it face down on the middle of the sticker that you will see in front of you. We'll start with the remarks from the minister and the other speakers. Then we will turn to the room for a Q&A. Once we have gone through the questions in the room, we will then turn it over to the Zoom. If you are participating by Zoom and you have any questions, please raise your hand during the Q&A period. And with that, I'll hand it over to the minister.
Thank you. Wajagam Shaj, Naskumna Jiduksha, Gegoni Mandy Gull-Masty, Canada de Bechesu Dabatsagan. Hello, good afternoon, bonjour, merci de venir. Thank you for coming. My name is Mandy Gull-Masty, Minister of Indigenous Services Canada. I'm joining you today from the unceded and unsurrendered territory of the Algonquin and Anishinaabe people. Merci d'être ici. Thank you for coming. I know that we are beginning to prepare for the holiday season, so I want to really express my thanks for joining today to tell this important story. At the heart of today's presentation is the work that we're undertaking to drive and deliver better results for First Nations children. We are looking to ensure fewer children in care, ideally none, fewer children entering into the system for the first time, ensuring that there's shorter periods of care, and that more children are placed within community with those that they know and love. On a une vision claire, c'est une vision urgente. Une vision qui est basée sur les besoins de les enfants, de les Premières Nations. Today is a historic day for First Nations in Canada because it is one that opens the door to ensuring that this vision becomes a reality. As the Minister of Indigenous Services Canada, it is an honor to present, and with a deep sense of responsibility, a proposed path forward for long-term reform for First Nations children and family services programs. Je le fais avec un respect et une responsabilité. Je crois que c'est important de déterminer un processus pour avancer ce dossier. I believe a path to move forward respects First Nations rights to self-determine and ensure the best possible outcomes for First Nations children, and one that demonstrates the seriousness of our government's commitment to lasting systemic change. This is the message that I've heard from First Nations leaders across the country. Before I tell you what it is we intend to do, it's important to provide a bit of context to situate us today. In 2016, the Human Rights Tribunal found that Canada discriminated against First Nations children on reserve and in Yukon. This included underfunding child and family services compared to those available to other children in Canada. Depuis 2016, le Canada a fait beaucoup de progrès dans ce dossier. Since 2016, Canada has increased contributions for actual costs of these services from $600 million annually to nearly $4 billion a year. The reality is that while this progress has been made, First Nations children continue to be disproportionately represented in care. Il existe des preuves claires que la réforme à la long terme est une solution que nous avons besoin de déterminer. Quand les Premières Nations prennent contrôle de la gouvernance et de la reddition des comptes, les services donnent des meilleurs résultats pour les enfants parce qu'ils sont conçus, ouverts et supervisés par les Premières Nations. In 2002, Canada did the work with leadership of First Nations to put in place measures of reform that also included prevention and services of representation. In July of 2024, Canada and the Assembly of First Nations announced a proposed national final agreement on long-term reform. This was put to a vote at the AFN Special Assembly in Calgary on October 17 in 2024, where 267 chiefs and proxies out of 414 voted against the resolution that would have ratified a final agreement. Les chefs ont demandé à l'Assemblée de trouver une nouvelle voie. I've heard consistently from First Nations across the country throughout my time as minister that while some elements of the 2024 final agreement united First Nations together, it also lacked the flexibility needed to reflect regional realities. This is a critical shift that we have incorporated into our approach. If, for example, leadership from the Chiefs of Ontario and the Anishinaabe Nation wanted to move ahead with reforms by negotiating directly with Canada. We have undertaken that process with much success. In early 2025, the Government of Canada signed an $8.5 billion final agreement with the Chiefs of Ontario and Anishinaabe Nation to implement long-term reforms to the First Nations Child and Family Services Program in Ontario. So far, we have heard that this has been a successful approach. Ontario Chiefs are united in stating that this is the best path forward for them. We also believe that it is one that ensures First Nations access to resources that they need to implement meaningful, community-driven, and defined change for their children. On a écouté, on a appris, et aujourd'hui, on agit. For today's announcement, I'm proud to present a new path forward for First Nations and the Canadian Human Rights Tribunal that reflects the regional realities and puts First Nations children and families at the core of decision-making. Moving forward, Canada's plan includes to advance long-term reform of the First Nations Child and Family Services Program that will be held alongside and with First Nations across this country. Canada's new regional approach will be supported by the continued commitment of funding dollars within the 10-year window that we have previously seen. We are looking to move forward with $35.5 billion until 2033-34, and a new commitment of $4.4 billion annually after that 10-year period to make sure that First Nations children and families now and in the future have consistent, sustainable resources of funding. Cette nouvelle approche est basée pour établir une ressource régionale et de soutenir par un investissement de 3,5 milliards de dollars sur 7 ans et de 4,4 milliards de dollars annuellement par la suite. C'est un engagement durable pour aujourd'hui et pour l'avenir. This commitment is equal to what has been proposed under the 2024 final agreement. This funding also includes additional supports for First Nations representatives who will act as cultural and legal advocates for the First Nations members when children and families are involved in child welfare system. Cet processus assure que les droits des enfants sont respectés et que les enfants restent proches de leur culture et leur communauté et leurs racines. Quelque chose d'important durant une période de temps où les enfants sont les plus vulnérables dans leur vie. This funding represents long-term investments to support sustainable First Nations-led change for now and future generations. Most importantly, this approach would enable First Nations-led regional agreements across the country within a national strategy to support solutions designed by and for First Nations to keep children safe and connected to their families, cultures, and communities. The additional work that we have to do when children find themselves in care, one of the most vulnerable periods of their lives. Avec ces négociations régionales et en travaillant ensemble, on va pouvoir adapter le cadre national aux réalités régionales. This means making changes to reporting, planning, and governance so that First Nations Child and Family Services agencies are accountable not only to the communities that they serve, but also to the children and family that they are working with. In the early part of 2026, we will engage with First Nations communities in all regions across the country to articulate the nature of these proposed negotiations and to jointly determine appropriate space, pace, and format for these discussions. Beaucoup de nations et d'organisations régionales des Premières Nations ont demandé à mon ministre d'aller dans cette direction. Indeed, we have heard this message from across the country. I've received a number of Band Council resolutions to advance regional agreements, letters of interest to start exploratory discussions, and also letters of intent to pursue this dialogue. We want to prioritize progress made with partners that have expressed an interest in moving towards regional agreements. We will keep the door open to any nation that chooses to engage in this process. Our goal is to implement successfully concluded regional agreements by April 1st, 2027, including time for First Nations to transition. We know that the capacity and reality of First Nations across the country differs. We want to meet communities in the spaces that they're in and provide them the supports that they need to move forward and come online in the space that they need to be with. C'est un objectif ambitieux et on va avancer avec d'urgence, discipline et respect pour les Premières Nations. This approach will also help to create First Nations-led governance models that give First Nations the power to deliver better results for their children. This is of critical importance. This is what we have heard from First Nations communities. Regional models will seek to deliver tangible, material results, fewer children in care, ideally none, fewer children entering into care for the first time, ideally none, shorter stays because services are culturally grounded and better connected, and more children reunited with their families, quicker. This is what solutions look like. This is what success looks like. Je veux être clair qu'on ne sera pas ici sans le leadership des Premières Nations. First Nations have set the direction that we are moving forward in. We are responding to it. This is a path forward that envisions First Nations-led, evidence-informed, and culturally appropriate direction. First Nations from across the country have been loud and clear. We support the long-term reform of child and family services, but agreements must and have to reflect regional realities, and participation has to be determined by the mandate of First Nations that they give to their regional organizations. I want to repeat, this is the most important part of moving forward today, that we have heard from First Nations, that they wish to determine the steps for them, and should they wish to seek and engage in providing a mandate to organizations to work with them, we will respect that and support the capacity that they need. As a former First Nations leader myself, I know that this type of change needs to be driven by decision-making at all levels within the community. It's also important that we reflect the diversity of First Nations across the country. We know that they each have their own unique language, culture, and relationship to their territory and structure as a community. During these negotiations, there will be no interruptions to services. We will continue in our commitment to deliver and fund child and family services within the national scale. On va continuer ce travail avec humilité, mais aussi avec d'urgence, au service des enfants, des familles et des communautés. En conclusion, j'aimerais dire que nous savons qu'il y a encore trop d'enfants qui ont été retirés de leur maison. Trop d'enfants grandissent dans une prise en charge. Ça cause des douleurs profondes et un traumatisme à long terme. We know that there are many children that are still entering into care. Far many that are being taken into custody for extended period of time that creates a lot of pain and hurt, but also long-term trauma. On ne sait que c'est pas juste une statistique, mais c'est une réalité vécue par les familles. This is not just a statistic. This is the reality that Indigenous families, First Nations families are facing today. We need to work together, government, communities, organizations, and families to change this reality by putting children and families at the center of every decision, every policy, and every funding choice. We are committed to doing that work. We want to ensure that in moving forward, that we have the future of those children at the very center of our decision-making. On fait en sorte que chaque enfant grandisse entouré par sa famille, sa culture, et sa communauté. One of my commitments is to ensure that children are growing up within the context of their community and their family, understanding and knowing what their culture and identity is and their connection to their community. It's important that that identity is protected and that their language and connection is nurtured in this difficult time. Parents and caretakers feel secure in their ability to ask for help as part of this approach. We want to ensure that there are reliable services in the community, no matter what and where. En donnant plus de pouvoir aux Premières Nations avec les accords régionaux, on améliore l'accès des familles aux services et les résultats pour les enfants. This is how we will reduce the number of children in care and move to keep families together. I look forward to continuing this urgent and important work with all of you. Ensemble, on va faire des services forts et durables pour nos enfants. I want to also, in closing, express my thanks to everybody who has worked in this process. First, National Chief Cindy Woodhouse-Nepignac, who has been working for and looking for direction from First Nations across the country and responding to what they have expressed in the last session and looking at a final agreement on long-term reform. I'd like to also thank former portfolio holder, Regional Chief Joanna Bernard, for everything that she's done in this space, as well as the new portfolio holder, Francis Véro-Paul, who I've had the opportunity to work with previously. In addition, the commitment and participation of the members of the National Children's Chief Commission and the Caring Society itself. We all have a mandate to serve First Nations children and their families. Now is the time that we have to move together forward in a good way and meet that responsibility with urgency, with trust, and meeting children's needs in the very space that they are in today. Agada, miigwech.
All right, thank you. We'll move to the Q&A portion. We'll start in the room. If you are on Zoom, please raise your hand now.
Sorry, we just have one more
Oh,
speaker.
more speakers. Okay, sorry. Never mind. We'll go to the Parliamentary Secretary.
Bonjour tout le monde. Mon nom est Ginette Lavac. Je suis la secrétaire parlementaire pour les services aux Autochtones Canada. C'est réellement un plaisir pour moi d'être ici aujourd'hui, de participer dans cette importante conférence de presse ensemble avec la ministre et un privilège, un énorme privilège pour moi de travailler sur ces dossiers importants. Alors, pour moi, ce jour, aujourd'hui, le dépôt de ce plan démontre réellement l'évolution de l'amélioration du programme pour répondre justement au fait que la discrimination a été notée par le tribunal. Mais disons-le, la ministre le dit souvent aujourd'hui, je le répète, c'est une nouvelle approche qu'on prend. Ce plan est réfléchi et il répond à ce que nous avons entendu sur le terrain avec les Premières Nations. Puis on le voit, les meilleurs plans qui sont jamais développés sont souvent ceux qui sont très souples, ceux qui sont évolutifs et continuent à changer et à bouger en fonction de ce que les participants vivent sur le terrain. Donc, le fait qu'on prenne une approche qui est régionale, que cette approche soit par, pour et avec les Premières Nations est au cœur de ce travail-ci. Puis pour moi, démontre, je pense, l'engagement, puis réaffirme réellement l'engagement qu'a notre gouvernement de faire avancer des solutions qui sont durables, mais qui sont aussi centrées sur les droits des enfants, les droits des familles, des Premières Nations. Donc, je crois que c'est vraiment un pas dans la bonne direction, puis je suis fière de pouvoir participer dans ce travail important, puis faire la suite ensemble avec l'équipe de la ministre. Bonne journée.
Okay, now we'll move to the period of questions. We'll start in the room with Alexandra Anger from Radio-Canada.
Bonjour et puis merci pour la présentation. J'aimerais qu'on nous explique un petit peu le processus qui a été demandé par le tribunal des enfants, c'est-à-dire que suite au désaccord en 2024, de ce que j'ai compris, c'est qu'il y aura deux propositions qui vont être déposées, la vôtre et celle du groupe des Premières Nations. Donc, qu'est-ce que c'est la suite? Dans le fond, ça s'inscrit, vous avez une proposition, mais il y aura négociation et je veux entendre un petit peu là, de la part de la ministre et peut-être la secrétaire aussi. Quelle est la suite? Comment ça va se dérouler, tout ça? C'est quoi? Puis qu'est-ce qui est le principal point que vous apportez concrètement, là, vous, comme démarche, puis que vous souhaiteriez qu'il soit inclus?
Parfait, merci. J'apprécie la question. Aujourd'hui, on a été mandaté pour soumettre un plan qui représente la position de notre gouvernement. C'est un plan qui est basé avec l'approche qui était prise avant, comme nouveau ministre, avec un nouveau premier ministre, un nouveau gouvernement. On est là pour assurer que c'est un processus qui va avoir de la continuité. On est encore à la table pour établir des fonds qui vont être soumis au niveau d'une approche régionale. C'est une des choses que je pense qui est un peu différente dans le processus. Depuis le temps que je suis devenue ministre, j'ai reçu plusieurs lettres, j'ai reçu plusieurs approches de les nations qui ont vu ce qui s'est passé à l'Ontario, qui ont décidé qu'eux, ils aimeraient avoir eux-mêmes un processus similaire, je vais dire. Je suis là pour respecter les Premières Nations avec les choses qu'eux, ils déterminent pour eux-mêmes, mais aussi de travailler avec the National Children's Chiefs Commission and Caring Society pour regarder les demandes dans un contexte national. Une des choses qui est claire pour moi comme ministre, c'est les besoins d'une nation sont souvent vraiment différents de les autres nations. Les besoins, mettons, à l'Ontario sont différents de les besoins de l'Alberta ou Nouveau-Brunswick. C'est parce que les nations ont eux-mêmes une relation avec le niveau de gouvernement provinciaux. Aussi, c'est un contexte qui appartient à eux-mêmes comme une Première Nation. Et dans notre approche, les choses qui ont été ajoutées, c'était toutes les choses qu'on a entendues durant la dernière session quand il y avait un vote pour l'ancienne entente. Une entente qui était et continue d'être très bon. Mais on a ajouté les choses que le monde a demandé. C'est pour assurer la continuité des fonds. C'est pour ça qu'on a établi 4,4 milliards de dollars par année après le 10 ans. Mais aussi, c'est un contexte qui reflète un peu d'informations. Je pense que je vais demander à Lisa pour parler de les choses qui ont été ajoutées, comme le portrait de la communauté, l'inflation, des choses comme ça.
Oui, merci. Quand on parle du plan, c'est un programme qui va avoir beaucoup de modalités. On continue à soutenir la prévention, le financement des activités de prévention. Des activités sont là pour justement éviter que les enfants soient pris en charge. On va aussi avoir du financement pour assurer que les populations sont reflétées, comme c'est un mandat avec au lieu de faire un financement par année, c'est basé sur la population qui a grandi. Aussi, un stable montant pour l'inflation par année. Une des modalités probablement les plus intéressantes, c'est la réflexion que les coûts dans les communautés lointaines sont plus élevés. Et il y a de la recherche qui a été accomplie par Anishinaabe Nation qui focus sur un ajustement pour les communautés lointaines. Et ça fait partie de l'ensemble du programme qui se trouve dans notre plan.
Oui, si je veux juste réitérer ou rajouter à ça le fait que justement, lorsqu'on a entendu, puis avec le fait que le APTN a dans son ensemble pas voté en faveur du plan qui était à l'époque un cadre simplement national. Là, on intègre puis on reconnaît que l'importance d'une structure, un framework national existe toujours et est important, mais on rajoute l'élément de plan régional qui vont mieux répondre, on croit, aux besoins de chaque communauté, que ce soit des ententes par province. C'est possible qu'il y en aura peut-être multiples dans une province, dépendamment de la réalité sur le terrain, si ça répond plus clairement.
Alexandra, do you have a follow-up question?
Et, en fait, pour moi, ce qui demeure abstrait, puis que j'aimerais qu'on puisse expliquer là, pour les Canadiens, justement, là, c'est que vous faites une proposition d'un programme avec des priorités, vous tenez compte, vous avez tenez compte des réalités régionales, mais les Premières Nations vont aussi faire une proposition. Et qu'est-ce qui va... Les deux vont se croiser, vous allez... il va se faire une négociation entre vous et eux pour déterminer à la fin un plan final. Est-ce que c'est ça? Ou on a déjà un peu une première ébauche et eux vont juste l'appliquer sur le terrain avec leur propre proposition? C'est ça que j'aimerais comprendre.
OK. Merci pour la question. C'est important de définir que Canada a soumis un plan. L'autre plan soumis par l'Assemblée, l'APN, l'Assemblée of First Nations, et le Caring Society et le National Commission des chefs sur les enfances. C'est deux groupes qui soumettent ces plans-là. À l'intérieur de ce processus, on définit une ouverture pour établir, peu importe où tu veux y aller, une ouverture que tu peux participer dans un plan d'un contexte national, ou si vous avez, si les nations aimeraient participer dans un processus qui est basé plus, avec plus de détails dans une approche régionale, qui contient encore un aspect d'un framework national, tu peux le faire. Puis là, ça va être aux tribunaux de décider où est-ce qu'on va trouver le balance entre ces deux approches-là. C'est important de savoir que les Premières Nations sont uniques ici au Canada, sont diverses. Ils ont eux-mêmes leur culture, langue, identité, relation avec leur terre, manière de guérison, de cérémonie. Et c'est pour ça, moi, comme ministre, je veux vraiment assurer le monde qui vient pour faire des discussions ou des négociations qui comprennent que c'est le contexte qu'on doit baser cette protocole, je vais dire. Mais je suis là aussi pour travailler avec les autres groupes qui soumettent un plan. Je l'ai rencontré, j'ai parlé avec eux plusieurs fois. J'avais une ouverture de travailler avec eux. J'ai même demandé si aujourd'hui on pourrait déposer nos plans en même temps. Malheureusement, ils ont décidé qu'eux-mêmes, ils vont déposer leurs plans. Mais j'ai quand même toujours une ouverture de travail avec eux. Parce qu'au fin de la journée, on a tous le même mandat, c'est de répondre à les besoins aux enfants.
Thank you. And we'll move to Fraser Needham from APTN.
So I'm just reviewing the numbers here on the original agreement that was rejected by the Chiefs in Assembly in October 2024. That count on the table was $47.8 billion, and this is now $35.5 billion. So that's, by my calculation, about a difference of about $12 billion less. Can you explain to me why it's less, or why the two different numbers?
The original commitment that was put forward is one that we continue to maintain. The matrix of evaluation is now on 7 years, with the remaining balance of those funds to be at $35.5 billion. We have continued to fund the actual costs of child and family services from the time of the initial deposit of that commitment. So there is ongoing use of these amounts to ensure that we are able to support First Nations while they are continuing to provide that service. What is different in this process, what is supplementary, is that we have not only identified new parameters that are going to allow for flexibility of funding so that communities can now define where they wish to allocate funds in terms of prevention, IT, remote costs, what they're looking to do with post-majority care. You know, every region is going to be provided the flexibility to ensure that they're allocating dollars within that space. What's also important to include in this reflection is beyond the 10-year commitment, we have also provided an ongoing $4.4 billion annually. And this is something that we heard in the discussion of the last final agreement. This was one of the reasons why it didn't pass, because regional groups wanted to be part of the decision-making process, and they wanted to ensure on long-term, ongoing, sustainable funding. What we have also included in this process is the opportunity for governance structures to be defined by First Nations community, reporting with indicators and outcomes that will define what the future looks like for how they are doing service delivery, and it will also inform future ongoing needs for funding. So we are working with communities to evaluate at multiple stages what they are looking to do, how they're going to move forward. I'm very pleased and proud to be part of this ongoing commitment by this government, but I think that we have done a lot of work to ensure that we are responding to what we heard when the last agreement was not accepted by Assembly, and respecting what they wanted to do and moving forward for themselves as First Nations.
Yeah, so I looked at, I know one's for 7, one and the previous was for 10, but I think there might still be a slight difference. I guess the question is, can you confirm that both agreements are financially the same?
You want to take a technical? Okay.
Hi, thanks for the question. Yeah, in fact, I would say that we are building upon the original commitment. There's additional funding being put aside for First Nation representative services in the rest of Canada, and that is a new commitment this government is making. And I think to draw the biggest attention to the ongoing funding commitment of $4.4 billion is extremely important. It's a commitment that will ensure sustainable long-term funding and ensure that the discrimination ends today and for future generations.
All right, we'll go to Sopal Duck from Global News.
Hi. When it comes to these First Nations representatives who act as cultural and legal advocates, can I get clarification on that? Is it one for each regional agreement, one for each First Nation community, or is it like one for family? Like, who will occupy these roles?
I believe that decision needs and should be taken by First Nations. So I'm open to a lot of flexibility. If regions want to have multiple regional agreements per province, I think that this is a good pathway forward. I also think contextually, in terms of provincial relationships, if there is a nation that has jurisdiction or because there are long provincial lines, I'm open to having that discussion. Who they are looking to support in terms of cultural and legal representatives should be defined by them. For me, I'm here to negotiate. I'm here to have open dialogue on what best supports their needs. I try to stay away from defining one role specifically. The needs of First Nations vary across this country. They're quite diverse. I want to respect them for where they are at in terms of being First Nations. Some communities have very high capacity, may not need these supports. Some communities may require additional supports. So it's available to them as a tool as needed.
And follow-up, Sopal?
On another topic, Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre said he would build a pipeline to the BC coast, given that the federal government has jurisdiction on these matters. Do you agree with the premise that the federal government has powers to build a pipeline to the BC coast without consultation or without approval of First Nation communities along the way?
Because I'm the Minister of Indigenous Services and my responsibility is within this portfolio, I will respect the work and the role of the Prime Minister to address these kinds of questions. As a former First Nations leader, consultation is not only essential, it is required as part of the process, which is why I am taking this approach in this file. I want to ensure that I'm not only engaging and working with community to reflect their unique identity as a First Nations, I'm also including them in the decision-making process. They're there to define the outcomes. I'm including them in the incorporation for evaluatory processes, and I'm helping them to define the future that they want to develop for their First Nations community.
Thank you. And we'll now go to questions on Zoom. If you have a question, please raise your hand now. We'll start with Palak Mangat from Parliament Today.
Hi, good afternoon. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can hear you.
Hi, great. I didn't catch, I'm not sure if it's Ms. Gina Wilson to the left of the minister. I just wanted to confirm your name.
Lisa Legault.
Lisa Legault. Okay, thank you. This question is either for yourself or the minister. There was talk about this revamped agreement being equal, but kind of building on the 2024 pact or the proposal that was rejected. Can you speak to what makes you comfortable that this will have AFN ratification buy-in this time around?
Thank you. Thank you for the question. I think that I'm comfortable because this plan is building on the continued commitment that was put forward previously. We have also included new roles and responsibilities for how community can engage. Most importantly, in working with the Assembly of First Nations, they're there to take the direction and representation of First Nations communities. This is the same space that I'm working in, that I'm here to take direction and reaffirmation of First Nations communities. We are essentially walking on the same path in parallel. I think we are going to arrive at the same outcome. I have confidence that when First Nations communities want to decide for themselves what their outcome is going to be, that I'm going to respect that as a First Nations minister. When I go to the Assembly of First Nations and work with them in that space, I'm also going to respect what it is they're trying to do in that space. Communities have the right to determine and define for themselves what their future looks like. That also includes defining how they get there. So as I said previously, I'm here to work with all parties who are at the table, Assembly of First Nations, National Children's Chiefs Commission, the Caring Society. At the end of the day, we all have the same mandate. It is to serve children and their families in a timely way with urgency. This file has been ongoing since 2016. I think it's really our responsibility to showcase that we can move forward working together, collaborating, defining what community is asking us to do, and giving them the opportunity to ultimately determine what they would like to do for the future of their children in care.
And follow-up, Palak?
Excuse me, before follow-up, can you go in French with that answer, please?
OK, si, j'espère que je vais me souvenir de toutes les choses que j'ai dit. Comme ministre, je suis vraiment là pour travailler avec tout le monde. Je suis là pour travailler avec les communautés qui ont établi qu'ils veulent définir eux-mêmes leurs besoins dans une entente avec une approche régionale. Je suis aussi là pour travailler avec l'APN dans le contexte de l'Assemblée. S'il y a des communautés qui veulent être dans cette approche-là, je suis là pour travailler avec eux dans ce contexte-là. Mais au fin de la journée, tout le monde autour de la table, on a le même mandat. Ça fait depuis 2016. Yeah. Tu sais l'année que je veux dire. Mais on est là pour répondre à un mandat. On est là pour travailler avec les familles et les enfants ensemble. Moi, j'aimerais faire ça avec une urgence, une approche respectueuse qui va aider les communautés de définir la vision de leur futur et la manière qu'ils veulent faire l'approche d'aider les enfants durant la période qu'ils sont en garde.
Okay, back to you, Palak, for your follow-up.
Yeah, thanks. You talked about, there was talk about engagement supposed to take place in early 2026. Can someone lay out just sort of the logistics? What exactly are the next steps, and what's the plan? Should this proposal be rejected again at that point?
Thank you, Alex, for the question. We are first and foremost going to wait for the tribunal to provide an answer and determine, what they have defined as that next step. I think that's going to give an indication of the direction that they're seeking this work to be undertaken. But because we are waiting for that feedback, we are also in parallel going to begin the engagement process of having communities come forward and discuss with us what the context of a regional agreement means for them. So these would be exploratory discussions. It would be determining what that process looks like. What do timelines look like for them? What are their needs? What is the context of a regional agreement for them? I have received a number of Band Council resolutions and letters, as I said previously, from multiple, if not all, almost all provinces, with the exception of maybe 2 Atlantic provinces, but almost all provinces have submitted a request. I will begin with those groups. I'm also open to receiving, any other requests from other groups that wish to engage. I think this is going to be a significant undertaking. We have the capacity, we have the resource, and I think Indigenous Services Canada has the experience to ensure that we are creating a comprehensive process for communities to explore which pathway they would like to move forward.
Perfect. And I'll do one last call out. If you're online and haven't had a question, but you would like one, please raise your hand. And I'm not seeing any more hands up. So with that, we will end the press conference. Thank you so much.
You want to take one last one from Fraser?
Oh, sure, Fraser, go
question.
ahead.
Yeah, I think it was asked in French a few times, but this issue with the Chiefs and Assembly here, December 2024, voted to have the National Children's Chiefs Commission work on a long-term agreement with the government. From what they've told us, that the government will not meet with them, and it doesn't appear from anything I've heard here that they're part of this plan going forward. So I wonder why that is the case.
Actually, I've had the opportunity to meet with them. I met with the national portfolio holder on 2 occasions. I've met with the national chief on multiple occasions. I've had the opportunity to meet with Chief Pauline Frost, who chairs the Chiefs Children's Chiefs Commission. I've met with the commission itself. I've met with the regional portfolio holder, Francis Véro, twice. I had the opportunity to meet with Dr. Blackstock. In all of those instances, I expressed my openness to work with them, not only in terms of identifying what needs we would have to meet to move forward, and as recently as last week, expressed the desire to move forward in collaboration, in partnership. And the work that we undertook to create the plan and path that we're trying to determine is based on existing research, is based on an existing agreement that was defined by them. So we are not only using and developing their work, we're adding on to it. My commitment is still in place. I had wished that it would be all of us sitting up on this stage. Unfortunately, you know, they wish to move forward in the presentation of their own plan, which I respect. I think that's their prerogative to do so. But I am still open to working with groups because I think that's the importance of being in leadership. You have to be transparent. In my approaches with them, I disclosed what my approach was going to be. Regional approaches with a national component. I was very clear on that. When you're in an elected position and you work for First Nations members, you have to disclose what you are hearing. You have to disclose the information that you get. I believe that I have been transparent in that process, and I think that for continuity of the work and being sure that we meet the mandate, I am still open to having them at the table and working with me because at the end of the day, we are fulfilling a public mandate to First Nations children and communities.
All right, thank you. If there are no further questions in the room, one more, and then I think we'll end it after that.
So, how do you react, pardon, je vais le dire en français, comment vous avez réagi au refus des Premières Nations de ne pas faire la démarche avec vous aujourd'hui, de soumettre leur plan également en commun là, avec vous aujourd'hui?
You know, if you want to... Oh, en français? Oui. Si tu veux avancer un dossier en premier, il faut que tu aies une ouverture. Je sais que le contexte de l'historique de ce dossier était une de difficulté. Il y avait un challenge, une friction avec les groupes, je veux dire. Moi, je suis un nouveau ministre. Je ne suis pas ici pour prendre ça avec moi comme bagage. Je suis là pour avancer le dossier parce que je comprends que le plus important, c'est d'être transparent pour avoir des décisions qui reflètent les approches que j'ai entendues autour de le pays quand j'ai fait mon analyse de ce dossier-là, mais aussi de continuer d'avoir une ouverture de travail avec les autres groupes. Parce qu'au fin de la journée, c'est pas qui va avoir le meilleur plan, c'est pas qui va avoir la chance de déterminer que c'est leur plan qui va avancer, c'est le mandat qu'il faut qu'on livre un outcome pour les enfants. Parce que chaque journée qu'on reste dans ce contexte-là de discuter processus, c'est une autre journée qu'un enfant est en garde, sans leur communauté, pas avec leur famille, et pas entouré, pas protégés dans le contexte de leur identité et leur culture. Puis moi, ça, au fin de la journée, c'est la chose que j'ai dans ma tête que je travaille pour les enfants.
Okay. Thank you, everyone. That'll conclude our press conference. Thank you for your time today.
Merci tout le monde.